youth vote swing the election outcome in Zimbabwe? A closer look at how Kenya's decentralized government is working. And we'll have two Cameroonian artists in the studio who are part of a group performing for the Made in Cameroon Afrobeat Music Festival in Washington, D.C. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. You are in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Zimbabwe is preparing for a historic election on Monday, the first in 38 years without former leader Robert Mugabe on the ballot. But voters and observers are cautious in their optimism amid concerns over whether it will be a free and fair poll and whether the victor will actually deliver on promises to bring change. VOA's Anita Powell reports from the streets of the capital, Harare.
A new dawn in Zimbabwe as the nation holds historic elections? Depends who you ask. Opposition supporter Widden Stick has been waiting outside this Harare bank since literally before dawn for dollars. She says she's fed up and voting for opposition leader Nelson Chamisa.
We want to get U.S. dollars without having to queue at the bank.
8 months after President Emmerson Mnangagwa's inauguration, Zimbabweans' main concern, the economy, is little improved. Cash is difficult to get. Mnangagwa, who took over in November after the resignation of Mugabe, promised at his inauguration that he would take urgent action to fix the cash crisis.
So help me God.
That hasn't happened yet. In the capital, feelings about the poll, in which Mnangagwa is the frontrunner, vary widely.
Very much excited. The environment has been pretty peaceful, and the campaigning has been peaceful as well. And we've been going about our businesses normally, without fear or anything. So yeah, it's been great.
It's going to create many jobs for our youngsters, for our people, you know. I'm going to vote for ZANU-PF.
I'm not sure if there's ever going to be a real change. So there's not that much excitement for the meantime. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's just the same for years and years. So there is not that much hope.
Observers are reserving their judgment amid accusations of voter intimidation and problems with the voter roll.
It's too early to make pronouncements at this stage.
But rights groups say the news is not all bad.
Our partners on the ground have been saying that there is subtle voter intimidation, which is not as blatant as what we have witnessed before in 2008.
So is this going to be a transformation, or are the big promises only words? As Monday's vote nears, Zimbabweans can't seem to agree, but everyone is paying attention. Anita Powell, VOA News, Harare.
Now, for more insight into Zimbabwe's politics, I'm joined by Leon Hartwell, a Southern Africa political analyst who has lived and written extensively on Zimbabwe's politics. Leon, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
First off, we're counting hours before the polls opened in Zimbabwe. What are your expectations on the outcome of this presidential election?
Thank you. I think it's basically going to be a two-horse race. Based on what we've seen from Afrobarometer released a poll recently, and the current President Emmerson Mnangagwa is leading with 3 points. The second strong contender in this race is Mr. Nelson Chamisa. He's very young, he's 40 years old. He uses religion quite a bit in order to try and garner voters and so on. So it's going to be an interesting election.
Now, if you look at the two of them, because now they're the front runners, no question about this, what are the major differences in their vision for Zimbabwe?
I think in terms of their vision, they have actually very similar policies. So what it's going to boil down to is a lot about the historical context of this election. People have very tainted image of elections in Zimbabwe because of past voter intimidation and so on. It's also going to boil down to personalities. You know, Emmerson Mnangagwa has done a fairly good job to try and present himself as a new reformed individual, even though he has been with President Robert Mugabe since 1980, side by side working with him. Nelson Chamisa, to some individuals, he seems like a breath of fresh air. He's 40 years old. Many of the voters in Zimbabwe are young individuals, and so they look at this maybe as an opportunity for renewal.
Now, again, when you look at what's going on the ground, a lot of people are concerned as to whether they will accept the outcome of this election. Which way do you think it will go, and what do you expect any chaos or any major disagreements?
That's a very difficult question, and in Africa we have this saying, when two elephants fight, the grass gets trampled in the process. And so looking at the statistics, it looks like it's going to be a close race. I think we basically have three scenarios. One scenario, ZANU-PF wins. The opposition might try and say, it wasn't free and fair or whatever, but I think, things will go along the same direction. And then the second scenario is where the MDC wins with Chamisa as president. If that's the case, I think the security sector will step in. I'm not sure whether they would accept the election, even though they've said they will. But I'm skeptical because of the November coup. And then the third scenario, you might have a situation where none of these two candidates get 50% plus one of the votes, with the result then being that they would go into a runoff election.
Very quickly, Leon, you mentioned the coup. Mugabe said, he was ousted by the military. Which way do you think he will be voting?
That's a very hard question. We haven't heard much from former President Robert Mugabe. Although there have been one or two splinter parties that formed as, who claim, they represent some of his interests.
The ZANU-PF or the opposition?
I think in general he would try and keep quiet as possible, because that might be part of the deal. Stay out of politics, and your interest and your family's interest might be protected.
Leon, thank you very much. Let's hope for the best for Zimbabweans and peace as well.
Thank you.
Leon Hartwell is a Southern African political analyst. Now, still on Zimbabwe's politics, young people say their vote could bring about the desired change the country needs. As the battle for the 2018 presidential election narrows down to two frontrunners, President Emmerson Mnangagwa of the ruling ZANU-PF party and the main opposition leader Nelson Chamisa of MDC Alliance. VOA's Paul Ndiho is in Harare for us and has filed this report.
A drive through downtown Harare ahead of Monday's poll gives you just a glimpse of what the future holds for Zimbabwe. Long lines of people waiting to withdraw money from their banks. A dire financial situation has arguably worsened under President Mnangagwa, who failed to address chronic cash shortages that are choking businesses and the poor. The president's supporters disagree and say he is the man for the job.
President Mnangagwa has articulated his vision very well for this country, and his vision has been articulated since he took over office after the new dispensation. And we already see the implementations of some of the promises that he has made to the people, and we want to stay on that track.
The youth vote will be crucial. Perhaps it could shape the future of Zimbabwe, as the election is being cast as a fight between the old guard of independence war heroes and a younger generation.
Vote for the President of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Comrade D. Mnangagwa, because after the new dispensation, he has actually managed to open up, resuscitate the industries, and farming, mining, and agriculture as well.
Critics say this general election is like no other. Opposition leader Nelson Chamisa, MDC Alliance, has galvanized his opposition party with simple speeches and promises of economic revival. At 40 years old, he is Zimbabwe's youngest ever presidential candidate. Earlier this week, at his party headquarters, he urged the youth and the party members to come out in large numbers for Monday's election.
We were born in a very difficult economy, and our hope is that on the 30th, after we vote, things can change for the better for Zimbabwe, because we are hoping for a better future for ourselves.
Young voters say they are fed up with ZANU-PF's policies that have run down Zimbabwe and should make way for younger leaders like Chamisa.
What kind of change do you want to see here in Zimbabwe?
We need to have leaders who are accountable. We need to have leaders who are transparent. We need to have leaders who are focused and also who can lead and put our economy front.
Thousands of young people graduate from university every year to join the ranks of unemployed. Many ache a living hawking wares and airtime on the streets. While young voters in the past have been comfortable neglecting the importance of voting, they now realize that their voice matters because democracy doesn't work without citizen participation.
Largely himself, he has been corrupt. I mean, he has been in government for the past 38 years. So what new change does he want to bring when he failed to bring change in the past 38 years?
Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Harare.
Malians will vote for president on Sunday amid violence from various groups that include Islamist militants, Tuareg separatists, drug traffickers, ethnic vigilantes, and Malian security forces. Incumbent President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, popularly known as IBK, runs for re-election amid a mounting death toll from jihadists, attacks, ethnic killings, and armed forces abuses that have become a defining feature of his presidency, despite thousands of French troops deployed since 2013 to contain the violence. Keïta, 73, faces 24 candidates, of which only one, Soumaïla Cissé, 68, is seen as having a strong chance of ousting him. Keïta beat Cissé in a runoff election in 2013. 8 million people are registered to vote, with polls expected to open at 8 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. local time. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, a look at Kenya's devolved system of governance. But first, here's Friday's headlines.
In South Africa, former President Jacob Zuma appears in court to face corruption charges over a $2.5 billion arms deal in the late 1990s, but a judge moves the case to November 30th. In Zimbabwe, polls will open on Monday for the first presidential election since Robert Mugabe was ousted in November after almost 4 decades in office. In Uganda, a court allows President Yoweri Museveni, 73, to run for a 6th term by upholding a constitutional change that eliminated the presidential age limit. In the Comoros, a referendum called by President Azali Assoumani, if passed, would allow him to seek re-election and retain power beyond 2021. In Nigeria, the U.S. technology firm Google launches a network of free Wi-Fi hotspots, hoping to spread internet usage.
Kenya has 47 counties led by governors thanks to a 2010 constitution that allowed for a devolved system of governance. The system took effect in early 2013. 5 years since, some counties are yet to see the positive impact of a centralized government, while others say it has made a huge difference, bringing wealth and jobs to residents. Now, joining me in the studio is Kenya's Embu County Governor Martin Nyaga Wambura. Governor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
First of all, how is the devolved government working for your county of Embu?
It's working very well, Esther, and we have made a lot of strides, especially in agriculture, water, and health, and also infrastructure.
You know, there are those who say with the devolved government, governance of system in Kenya, you have even senators, you have members of parliament, of course you're a governor, MCAs, members of county assembly, that the government is way too bloated. Is this a fair criticism, and do you think that there is a need to reduce the number of representatives?
Yes, I would say democracy can be expensive, but in the long run, it's going to be beneficial to the economic growth, because all the 47 counties are competing with each other and they are trying their best. So when all the counties are performing well, Kenya can easily get a double-digit economic growth rate.
In terms of your county, what have you seen as the biggest change since you got into the devolved governance?
The biggest change is health services, because we have put over 100 dispensaries and health centers, and we have improved the 6 level 4 hospitals. We have put many theaters. We are now able to do minor operations and cesarean operations in Chicago, Nunyenjes, Kiritiri, Kianjokoma, and all the other places. And then the top level hospital, level 5 hospital, we have, for the first time, we are able to do brain surgeries. We started last year in November. We have done 57 brain surgeries. Some cases are referred to by Kenyatta National Hospital. And we are also trying now to upgrade the renal unit. And we have attempted even a kidney transplant.
And have those brain surgeries been successful?
Absolutely, 100% successful.
Well, looking at the youth of Kenya generally, and maybe in your county very quickly, you can tell us, how is the devolved government working to make sure that they can get jobs that can bring income to their families as well?
Absolutely. Jobs are difficult to come by, especially because of we have not developed our industries. But we have employed quite a number of youth. But even more important is the fund, youth fund, empowerment fund, which we have introduced. For those brilliant youth who are already have started some little business, we are boosting them and giving them money at 25% management fee. And quite a number of them have become entrepreneurs and employed others. And a number of counties have come to benchmark with us in that field.
And in terms of skilled manpower, are you looking for people with skills within your county, or do you source them from other parts of the country? Very, very briefly, Governor.
Very briefly, it's only the minor skills like masons, carpenters, which we source within the county. But for doctors, we even have 3 doctors from Cuba who are doing a commendable job. We have sourced out of personnel from outside the county because we want the best in terms of development.
Governor, thank you very much for coming on Africa 54.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Governor Martin Wambora is Embu County Governor in Kenya. Now, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been hailed around the world for his achievements just 3 months into his new job. On Saturday, he will meet with thousands of Ethiopians in Washington, D.C., before heading to Los Angeles and then Minnesota, where he will speak to Ethiopian diaspora. Abiy has been widely celebrated at home, too, for the sweeping political changes he has made geared towards uniting the country and the Horn of Africa. Here's what some young Ethiopians think of their new leader.
He's a very charismatic and outgoing, unlike the previous officials, so that is exciting. I had some reservation on some of his policies, and I really didn't like how people want everyone to accept him, because we should be allowed to have our opinions. And I also credit the people who sacrificed for 3 years in the street to be credited as well. So he's the product of that movement.
Everybody's eager to protect the change, but sometimes this eagerness to protect the change is translating into social policing of different views. And this unquestioning flattery and praise that the public is giving to him, and sometimes associating the future of Ethiopia only with him, can be counterproductive and might not be good for the democratic culture that we want to build. I don't think Prime Minister Abiy wants this, so I really hope that he becomes proactive in instilling critical thinking, debate, and also institutional-led reforms rather than individual-led reforms.
He believes that we are all one, all Ethiopians are one, and unless we are all brought together and we have that mentality that we all want the same thing in our country, we cannot bring the change that we want. And he has that mentality, that positivity, that mindset that says nobody's left out and we are all together.
Ethiopia has a population of more than 100 million people. It is Africa's second most populous nation after Nigeria, with more than 40% of the population under the age of 15. Well, Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Google has launched a network of free Wi-Fi hotspots in Nigeria as part of its effort to increase its presence in Africa's most populous nation. The tech giant has partnered with Nigeria fiber cable network provider 21st Century to provide its public Wi-Fi service. Google stationed in 6 places in the commercial capital Lagos, including the city's airport. Internet penetration is relatively low in Nigeria. Some 25.7% of the population made use of the internet in 2016, according to World Bank data. Similar services have been launched in India, Indonesia, Mexico, and Thailand. And finally, Bollywood actresses dazzled on the catwalk on the opening night of the India Couture Week in New Delhi. Standout looks included the Swarovski-embellished Indian bridal wears outfits in mostly nude shades of pink, peach, and beige. Also on trend was a collection featuring a wide range of Victorian clothing with a pinch of Indian style. Models dressed in embroidered gowns and long skirts paired with velvet jackets brought the Old English colonial era. And that's what's trending today. It's Music Makers Friday, and today I'm joined in the studio by 2 outstanding Cameroonian artists, Fonyo Leonard Nsoburinka, known by his stage name as Mr. Leo. He is an Afro-pop dance hall artist, and Stanley Ibai Ino, a rapper. Thank you both for joining me today in the studio.
Thank you.
Now, let me start with you, Mr. Leo, here next to me. And, you know, you're here, both of you actually, for the Cameroonian Music Festival in Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about that, you know.
This is a festival. The term, the name is, you know, Made in Cameroon Music Festival. It's just to show the world the kind of music Cameroon does, you know, let the world, you know, listen to music from Cameroon. That's the main idea of it. You know, so we got like the best, you know, of Cameroon's
Cameroonian
finest,
artists
you know,
coming here
together, and you know.
Now, Stanley, tell me about what are you going to perform, and what do you expect the audience here in Washington, D.C. is looking forward to?
I mean, I think that the audience in DC is going to leave, is going to witness like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience, because it's going to be great. We have Mr. Leo, but we also have Magasco and Minx, all heavyweights from Cameroon. So, I mean, it's really great. It's our own way to showcase our culture. But we are not just all about Cameroon, it's about Africa. So if you're African, if you're from the US or wherever you are from, just come and experience this great moment. It's us sharing and writing our history with our music. So it's really going to be great.
I don't want to get political, but I have to say there has been a little bit of divide in Cameroon, the English-speaking and the French-speaking. But you as artists, you have a role to play in uniting your country. What role do you think you'll be playing, bringing this festival to DC, Mr. Leo?
Yeah, like I said, you know, this is to show the world the kind of music Cameroon does. But as an artist, you know, what most of us do is, you know, we just preach this peace. We just want peace. That's the end goal of it. You know, when you get to details, you can never know really what's coming from where and what's happening and where this is going to, but you just know something is happening, people are getting hurt, and we just want peace. We just want things to go back like they used to be, and even better. So the least we can do is talk through our music, and that's what we do best. Sing about it, sing for peace, and that's what we've been doing so far.
Tell me a little more about your music. You in person, Mr. Leo. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm kind of versatile. You know, I am able to touch any genre, you know, I feel like touching. But I just make sure I stay African, and I make sure I stay Cameroonian in it. For example, I could do a reggae piece, but when you listen to it, you know, this is an African and this is a Cameroonian. A hip-hop piece, same. R&B, same.
I've watched you a little bit on the video that you posted on YouTube, and it's really wonderful. And you, Stanley, what do you plan to do? What kind of music are you going to be presenting when you go to the festival?
I mean, like, everybody who follows me knows that I'm also, like, I touch a lot of things. Basically, I rap, but I also get into singing, you know, because We have this whole Afrobeats movement is a whole culture right now, so we are into it. So just like my brother, Mr. Leo, we do a lot of things at the same time. But for me, what we are about the show is the energy, you know, because the energy that is going to be out there tomorrow is going to be like overflowing. So you better come and witness the Cameroonian magic. We are one people.
I really want to come because I want to see how different it is from doing it back home and doing it here. Mr. Leo and Stanley, thank you very much for joining us on Africa 54. And we're going to leave you with Stanley Eno's latest song, Caramel, from all of us here in Washington. Have a great weekend.
We love you. Thank you.
Bet I'll be coming to this.
How many girls you know just wanna see you grow? How many girls I know? So many them I know wanna take control. How many girls you know just wanna see you grow? Oh yeah, Stanley, you know. Every day, every night she be singing on me, my king. And it's number one sensual, make me scream out. Every day, every night she be singing to me, you're my hero. Belly, 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 belly. Hey, something, Carmen, Carmen. Stop for your love. She's my Carmen, Carmen. Stop for your love. She's my Carmen, Carmen. Stop for your love. She's my Carmen, Carmen. Stop for your love. Elle est kinda, mon bébé, mon doudou, mon ginger. Elle est kinda, mon bébé, mon doudou, mon ginger. Say one time for the girls with the breakdown. Partout, partout, partout. Je reste debout, toujours avancé, je saute pas les pas. T'as tombé, déconné, merdé, moi j'en ai marre. Je viens viser, la balle a décollé. Nobody stop, nobody turn in my limo to KK. Batman I come when I did it. Me and my guys shut it down, I say let them know. Beaucoup des années gonna see me around, let them know. Nobody run me down, I say let them know. Y'a des hauts et des bas mais je laisse pas tomber, let them know. See me I say, j'ai beaucoup de fans partout. Ma musique on écoute partout. Ma mélodie coule partout, partout, partout. Voilà mon tour, buvez partout. Je veux le faire sous le partout. Beaucoup des années partout, partout, partout. J'ai beaucoup de fans partout. Ma musique on écoute partout. Ma mélodie coule partout, partout, partout. Voilà mon tour, buvez partout. Je veux le faire sous le partout. Beaucoup des années.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A lot of American English idioms refer to parts of the body.
Get off on the wrong foot.
Are Anna and Jonathan having trouble learning a dance? How did it go meeting your girlfriend's family?
Well, it was interesting. First, I was really late.
Oh, Jonathan.
Yeah, and then at dinner I spilled my water all over.